Many don't know there is a collegiate basketball team in Lexington that is nationally ranked. Just down the road from Rupp Arena, the Transylvania women's basketball team is currently ranked number 2 in the nation in Division III women's basketball. They are 21-0 this season, and they have not lost a home conference game since December of 2017.
Our seniors have a grittiness factor that has taken it to another level. And you know, there really is this mentality of, at the end of the day, they refuse to lose. And they have been in games where we probably should have lost, and somewhere they dig deep and find a way to have the outcome swing in their favor, game in and game out.
Coach Julie Folks is in her 9th season as the head coach at Transylvania and has built the program's standards to where they are today.
We kind of came into a culture of winning, so we didn't really know anything else. And pretty much my whole senior class, we haven't really lost a home game since we've been here, or a conference game as well. And it's just something that we expect.
Along with carrying this winning mindset, Coach Folks emphasizes that the team's relationships and communication accounts for just as much of their success as the analytics.
You know, how to score within an offense, how to come off a screen. We work on the same things with how do we talk to teammates, how do we talk to coaches, how do we handle things when things are really stressful. And I think that lets them be free enough to go win championships, because you cannot be hesitant when you're trying to have such big goals.
And the goals for a team on this kind of hot streak are not small.
We're ready for a national championship.
In Lexington, Hallie DeVore, WKYT.